So people always ask me what it is that I do with these nature clusters when I'm done with them, and I figured I would show you today by making some tags. And I'm sorry I didn't have all the things out ahead of time to show you the different papers before I cut them out. But let me tell you, I've got right there is some of the dyed material. And each tag is going to have some material that I've dyed myself. It might have been dyed with distress inks. It might have been dyed with alcohol inks. It could have been dyed with some Bombay inks that I have reduced with some water. Who knows? I just love to dye my fabrics with any leftover things. And then I've got another layer is alcohol inks on vellum. And I will be doing a video showing you how I did that pretty soon. And then the base of the whole tag, the stiffest part of it, are some old mixed media pieces I found when I was reorganizing the studio. And they are paints and inks and who knows what that I have done on them. Just lots of layers of juicy goodness that I cut into a tag shape. And then after I cut them into a tag shape, you might notice that there's little bits of gold around there. And I took my gold paint pen and just went around the edges. So I picked some nature clusters that were, comparable to the mixed media pieces, kind of where I started. And then I went and found fabric that matched, and I went and found the alcohol ink stuff that matched. And that means I was just shopping in the studio, which is one of my favorite things to do, and kind of like my goal for 2021 is to do more shopping in the studio. And I certainly don't need to go buy anything. And I've proven again and again to myself that if I want material in a certain color, I can probably dye it myself. One of the questions I get asked a lot when people see that I have dyed some fabric is, how color safe is this stuff and can you wash it? And I have to say, I don't worry about that. I don't plan on making any clothes with any of the fabric that I dye. None of the fabrics that I have dyed so far are done with natural dyes. They're all done with alcohol inks or distress inks or various things of paints or magicals. And they all have different, particulates in them. Some of them would be considered, water-based, and like the distressed inks, the more water you put on them, they're going to fade out. And the alcohol inks might be considered permanent, but maybe not light fast. So I don't know. When I'm doing something like this that's going to go in a journal or another art project, I don't worry if I'm going to be able to wash the fabric. I just want to get fabric in a color that I can do. And I will do some videos. I have those planned maybe for in a couple weeks on the various ways you can dye fabrics. I fight with threads. I fight with threading the needle. I sometimes forget and pull the thread back around the other way. Hopefully you saw the video I posted the other day on how I make the nature clusters. And it's just a really fun thing to go out into the garden and collect things that look like they might work in some of my pieces. Now these, I wasn't quite sure where all they were going to go, so I had to be careful and not use twigs or mosses or anything or leaves that were going to be possibly going overseas because customs and things, and I didn't want to have to hassle with that. But you could certainly take your clusters that have twigs from the garden and add them in there. And these are just a lot of the fibers. The nature clusters are a lot of the fibers that when I finish a project and I just cut the little, threads and stuff on my desk and I pile them in a, bag and pull them out when I'm working on something like this. And I did try speeding this video up a couple of times and that didn't work. So obviously also on my list for 2021 is to bring my editing skills when I have to do something like this a little bit up the level as far as ability, because I really was frustrated with that. I sped it up a little bit and then it slowed itself down, and I just finally threw my hands up and said, forget it. You guys can fast forward it on the YouTube side if you want to. But I think what I wanted to say while I was working on these and you were watching me work on these is this was one of those really rare occasions where I had a picture in my head of what I wanted to do. I've been trying to brainstorm different ways that I could use these nature clusters. And if you have any suggestions, please, put them down in the comments section there, because I'm all about the brainstorming. I love to brainstorm. But I've really been thinking, and I had done the wall hanging, which you might have seen, And I like the idea of doing these bigger, but I get so much joy out of making these clusters that really it's become a meditation for me. It's, I can sit down here and work on them for hours at a time, even just, gathering all my materials and sorting them into piles and color families and then putting them on the things that I know I'm going to sew on the next time I sit down. Anyways, I was trying to think of things that I could do with them, and I wanted to sew them to a bigger piece of material. And I had this vision in my head of these tags, these layers of tags. And what was really odd is when I went to the studio to look for what materials I had to make these tags for, they all came together exactly the way I had them in my head. Isn't that bizarre? That doesn't often happen. Usually I have this beautiful image in my head, and then when I sit down to create, I take like this left turn, and it might turn out better, but it doesn't turn out anything like what I thought it was going to be. Looks like I'm finally getting to the end of this pink one. I'm not going to apologize. I'm just going to ramble a little bit through here to keep you company while you're watching me do this. And thank you, those of you that have joined the Facebook group. Thank you so much. I really appreciate seeing all your posts. I appreciate your enthusiasm for creating an artist community where we can all share, support, and connect with one another. Okay, so we've got the first one done. And I tried to cut the fabric so it was kind of like a tag shape at the top, and that didn't work out so well. Fray those edges. Some of the fabric, when it's been dyed, frays really well. Sometimes the pigments get so thick in the fibers that I can't fray it very well. Yeah, here's where I try to make it a little bit more tag shaped. It was okay. It worked. And so I can picture that. That's exactly what I wanted on there. So then we've got the green one. Put that one off to the side. I think it's the brown one next. Oh, and then the pink ribbon. The pink ribbon that's going to go on there is each of the tags has a piece of fabric at the top, and that's also from the dyed material. So that's the alcohol ink on vellum that I was showing you a little bit more. I know this fabric was dyed with the Bombay inks when I was cleaning out those bottles, and that was really a fun experience because I also did the wax paper and deli paper and the different lightweight papers that I colored with, and tissue papers that I colored with those. So I hope that all of you are being inspired to create here in the new year. I know we all got kind of, hit hard last year, and many of us lost our mojo. I see a lot of people posting videos right now talking about, how they're going to focus on using their stuff. They're going to focus on sharing more. They're going to focus on encouraging one another. And I love that. I love hearing that everybody is going to join together and share their creativity, because that energy, we get it flowing back and forth. And I don't know, I get real excited when I hear other people getting excited about creating. I want to see the projects. I want to see what people are working on. I want to see how they did what they did. And I want to see when they think outside of the box. There have been some ideas coming across my screen lately that are really outside of the box, and that's exciting. It's exciting to think that we're pushing our own envelopes, and we're pushing the envelopes of our art, whatever niche that happens to be. And a lot of people are also going back to their basics. They're going back to, if they were always a watercolor artist, they might be going back to watercolor at its most basic level. If they were always a colored pencil artist, they're going back to drawing. And it's good. It's good to go back to those basics, the foundation, because as we remind ourselves of the foundation of knowledge that we have, then that you build upon that, and everything you do, that foundation comes through, but then it rises you up because you're building up that foundation, and it rises you up to do even more. And what if you didn't have something to look back on and say, well, this was my beginning? I mean, I don't have that. I don't have a beginning foundation that I can say, well, I used to always doodle when I was talking on the phone with my friends. I didn't. You know what? The only thing I ever doodled was boxes when I learned how, and it was the very short time that I was in an art class in junior high. I learned how to make those boxes where you take a square and then you layer another square over it and you attach the edges and then you get a cube. Wow, that was like not art, but that was the one thing I remembered. That's the only thing I doodled. I didn't have any foundation on that. My art at home consisted of paint by number kits and those, boy, if you're old, you'll remember these. They had these bags. They probably had a certain name and they were probably mimicking something that was really fashionable at that time. But they had these purses, not bags, but they were purses. They were stiff purses. And you would get a kit with this purse with the handles and all that good stuff. And then you would get these fake gems and you glued them onto the pattern that was already printed on the purse. And I remember doing one of those. I did a lot of paint by number stuff. It all stunk. It all just got torn up and thrown away. I didn't have that kind of an art base at all. And I didn't explore a lot of art. I didn't go to museums. I think the only museum I ever went to was the Van Gogh Museum, and that was a field trip when I was in high school. I didn't have the exposure to art. I didn't grow up in a family of people that it just wasn't part of our life plan. It's not that we didn't appreciate it, but we just didn't. I didn't have the exposure. And I didn't even really think about art in that way as something. So I didn't build a foundation. And I'm a little bit jealous. I admit it. I'm a little bit jealous when I think about people that have spent their entire lives building a foundation of skill sets. My skill set that I built over the years was not art. It was writing and it was speaking. And okay, the foundation I built first was fear. Fear. I was so afraid of everything, but mostly I was afraid to create. I was afraid to create because if I created something, I would want to share something. And if I shared something, I could be judged. And who wants to be judged? Because, when somebody judges you, somebody isn't happy. And usually it ended up being me. So I wanted to create. I wanted to write books. I wanted to write songs. I wanted to write song lyrics because I loved poetry. But it took me a long time to be brave enough to actually dive into that creativity. And it took me even longer to get out to the point where I would submit it and try and do anything with it. And so it was many, many years before I came to art, and I didn't have that foundation. So why do I tell you this story? I tell you this because if you've never done any kind of art before, that doesn't mean you can't do it now. I'm almost 63 years old. I did not do art until I was in my 50s sometime. I don't have the math to kind of figure that out. But, it's not been 10 years for me. It's not been 10 years. And the classes I've taken have only been in the last couple years where I've been taking some classes online. So don't let the fact that you don't have a foundation from art school or you haven't gone to the wonderful trades classes that some of the other countries have where you can, go off to university and study some of these things, and you didn't have a mentor all your life. And maybe you didn't even play with art like me as a kid. Maybe you didn't do that much of it. Don't let that hold you back from creating. If you're watching this video, chances are there's something in you that wants to create. There's something in you that wants to make something. So make something. Don't make it and think, oh, what am I going to do with it when it's done? Who am I going to give this to? How am I going to sell this? Don't think about that stuff, because I can tell you from personal experience, I spent so much time thinking about that kind of stuff. How am I ever going to, sell this book? How can I write this book in such a way that it's going to make me a bestseller and it's going to make me lots of money? Because you know what? It didn't happen. It never happened. I sold over 60 books. I have books translated into many languages in different countries, but I did not get rich from writing books. I mean, I get royalty checks that are like $2. That doesn't even buy me a spool of thread in today's prices. So don't think about what you're going to do with it when it's done. Don't think about that end result. Instead, like I said, if you're here, it's because you're a maker already or because you want to make something. Just go make it. Go take that absolute joy in the process. And I say this, and I say it over and over again, because I need to remind myself that my joy comes from creating in the moment. My joy comes from not saying I have an assignment that I have to create a painting that is exactly this size because it's going to go on this wall and it's going to have these colors in it. It's going to have this theme. I can't create like that. Some people can, and hats off to them. It's just doesn't happen to be me. I need to create in the moment from the excitement, like a vision like this, that I wanted to use these nature clusters that I make in a different way. And so I had this vision, and I just started to play. As soon as I picked up the different, bases, as soon as I picked up those old mixed media pieces that I almost tossed, and in fact, that one on the right now that I'm not sewing on next to the scissors, I remember doing that for a friend that wanted some backgrounds to illustrate a book of poetry that he was doing. And so I did them for him. And of course, I still had the actual pieces. And actually, I think the one on the left was from that as well, the pink one. I've had those for, 7, 8 years. They've just been drifting around the studio. It was just a fun thing to do. He used them, and then he decided to do his book a different way. And that was fine. It was just, one of those things to do for a friend. But I had so much fun making them. And how cool is it that I could dig them out of the studio and use them again in something like this? So don't do like I did. Don't let the fear of what am I going to do with it when it's done. I hope that we are all creating so much stuff that pretty soon we have boxes of finished items that we are shoving on the top of the closet shelves and into the garage. And you'll figure it out. You'll figure out what to do with it once you have it finished. But don't let that be your end result. There's so much joy to come from doing, for me, something simple like this, like stitching. It's just, it calms me. It's sort of like petting my dog, doing that kind of a slow stitch. It just sort of calms me down, lets me relax. I can feel my heart slow down. When I was younger, I used to have a lot of manic phases. I don't have them now, but I used to have a lot of manic phases where I was just like, I got to race all over the place and get something done. And sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. And sometimes it was sort of like, knocking over a can of paint on your desk and it just goes all over the place and doesn't make anything pretty. I love projects like this where I can just explore the joy of pulling together a project that I have in my head and seeing where it's going to take me. So what I'd love to hear from all of you, if you're so inclined to post down in the comments, tell me what you're afraid of when you create. Tell me what worries you when you create. I spent a lot of time worrying about people not liking what I did. I decided now I'm not going to worry about that anymore. But tell me what you're afraid of. Tell me what keeps you from creating. And maybe you just have some blocked mojo, and that happens too. We all have that. So it looks like I got 3 of them done. And we got the green one to finish up here. Because, if we talk about what it is we're afraid of, we might find that there's somebody else that has the same fear. You might have a discussion that happens down in the comments. I know in my live stream last week, I asked people 2 questions. I asked them what they were good at in their art. What was the thing they were really good at in their art? And think about that yourself too. Maybe just make a mental note. This is something I'm really good at. I think I'm good at playing with nature stuff, like my eco dyes, my eco prints. And what are you good at away from art? What is it that you are good at away from art? We had a great discussion around that. You can go back and check out the live stream, the most recent live stream if you want, and hear the conversation, because I was really impressed with the conversation that we had. Because sometimes we forget to acknowledge, we're so quick to say, I can't sew. You'll hear me say this all the time when you see me doing any kind of slow stitching. I admire those stitchers who can take the needle and thread and make these wonderful straight lines. It looks like they put a ruler down, and some of them do. I know you can put a ruler down. If I made a mark on my fabric with a ruler of a straight line, I still wouldn't stitch in a straight line. It just, my stitches are wonky, so you'll hear me say that all the time, and I know wonky stitches are cool, but I can still admire the people that have the skill set to put it all together in a really pretty straight line. But think about what it is that you do really well. And then realize that around you, maybe here in the comments, if we get that kind of a discussion going, there are a lot of people that know how to do things that maybe you don't feel you do quite as well as you want to. Reach out to them. Be a knowledge sharer. If you're an expert at something, or not even an expert, I shouldn't have used that word because that puts certain judgmental qualities into the thought process, and I don't want that. But if you see in the comments, if you see on YouTube, you see someone that's really good at something that you've tried to figure out how to do and it's just not working for you, reach out to them. And if you're that person and someone is reaching out to you and asking you, I don't get it. How did you do this? It makes no sense to me. I hope you'll take some time to, reach out a hand and help somebody else understand how to do what you do. I don't think there's any prize if we hoard our knowledge. I don't think there is this finish line that we're all racing to, and I get here first, I got to the end first, and I saved all my knowledge and I didn't give it to any of you. Sorry, I'm not buying it. That is not a race that I want to run. Well, first of all, creating should not be a race. It shouldn't be a race, but I don't want to hoard my knowledge. If you want to know how to do something and I know how to do it, I'm going to share it. I'm going to tell you because there's enough in the world for all of us. I don't need to hold back anything of mine. My art is not going to be less because I share my technique with you. And your art is not going to be less because you share how to do something with someone else. Now, granted, there are times where maybe there's an instructor and you're taking a class and they have this really innovative way of binding something. I've taken a couple of bookmaking classes and, I really, really appreciate the just the creativity that this instructor came up with, a couple of really innovative bookbinding techniques. And when I share those projects, I will share the finished technique, but I will not share how to do it because I paid money to take a class to learn this very unique thing from her. And I will recommend her class and I will tell you about her, but I'm not going to share that knowledge because it's not my knowledge to share. It's up to her how much of that knowledge she wants to give away. But for the most part, don't be a knowledge hoarder, be a knowledge sharer. That's just my particular way of looking at the art world. And if you agree with me or don't agree with me, I hope you agree with me. Let me know down in the comments. Do you agree with me? Should you be a knowledge sharer or should you hoard your knowledge and not give it away? And I don't mean give it away always for free. There's nothing wrong with someone with the knowledge setting up a class and sharing that knowledge through the class and getting paid for their work because, most of us on YouTube are doing these things, for free, except for the occasional tip, or some people set up other classes or memberships or what have you. There's all those different monetization things you can do. But for the most part, most of this knowledge is out here for free. All right, so enough of Susan rambling here. We are at the point of putting these tags together, and this was where I just really, I had like an electrical charge because, like I said, this was what I had in my head, and it was coming together. The base of the tag is a piece of mixed media paper that's got some kind of paints and things on it. Then the next layer is the vellum with the alcohol inks on it, and then a piece of fabric that I have dyed with one of my nature clusters stitched to it. Trying to figure out the right kind of beads to put on the little bulb pin so that they will hang properly. I like that. And of course, the green, my favorite. Green is my favorite. Wasn't quite sure how to pull them all together. I thought I was going to be able to do it with just the ribbons through them, and that didn't quite work out. So the bulb pins turned out to be a better idea. And I could have done that where they laid down a little bit farther, but I think I decided finally that just a single pin was all that they needed. What's your favorite color when you're looking at those? The green, the rust, the brown, or the pink? So I think I'm going to make up some more of these. I certainly have the nature clusters for them, but I might need to make some more alcohol papers and some more mixed media papers. Not sure. Let's get that bead on there. And if you have made some nature clusters of your own, what have you done with them? How have you used them? Have you put them in a journal? Have you put them on a journal cover? Have you stitched them larger and made them into a wall hanging? I want to know. I want to hear about it. So I don't know if I'm going to be doing more voiceovers, but if so, I'd also like to know, do you like these kind of rambles, or do you expect to hear just a step-by-step procedure and want the video to be half as long? You gotta let me know what you want, because although I'm making these videos to share knowledge, it does no good if the audience is not getting what they want out of it. Picking the beads for the pink one. Not sure. I love the look of beads on different projects, but as I get older, I discover it's much more difficult for me to work with the small beads. This is not a bad size for me, but the little seed beads, it's very hard for me to see, to thread the needle and to get the needle through the little holes, but I still like to add a few here and there. So let's see, I am filming this on a Friday. I think I'm going to actually get this up today on a Friday. And then next week, I hope to be working on the tutorial for the eco printing. And then I will do the alcohol inks and some dyeing videos. But if you have some videos you've been waiting for me to do, let me know what it is that you're looking for. And I will do my best. No promises as to when, because I have learned that if I set the expectation to get something done at a certain amount of time, it seems like something always pops up and I don't get it done, and I don't like not following through on that. I'm trying to be a lot better about the follow through. But I'm also trying to be better about not beating myself up. It's hard to do, as creative people, when we have those times where the project isn't coming together the way we really wanted it to. It's so easy to beat ourselves up. I could have said, I'm not going to post this video because I couldn't get the images to go the right direction I wanted to in the front. I couldn't get a few other things to happen the way I wanted them to happen. I said, well, then just don't do that. Just get it out there. There are some times, if you're doing a film and you're hoping it's going to win you an Academy Award, I can understand putting all that time into it to get it just absolutely perfect before you put it out there. I just want to show you guys what I'm working on. I want to talk to you about what's on my mind. I don't need to have a perfect video for that. I just need to get it done and get it out there so we can have a discussion about what's important to all of us. And I think what's important right now, when so many of us have hurting hearts for things that are happening all over the world, what's important now is to find the beauty in the little things that we can do every day to create. Find the joy and the beauty in making something out of nothing. And find your own personal courage to create. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do that. Don't let anybody rain on your parade, Don't let anybody say, oh, no, you can't do this. You can't do that. Not the way you're supposed to do it. Be a rebel. Be a rebel and march to whatever creative beat you hear. And sometimes it's going to flop. We all have those flops. We have a closet full of flops. I have a little stitch piece that I did recently that has been staring at me for probably a year because I had done some stitching on it and I loved the fabric, but the stitching just didn't come out right and I hated it. Well, I ripped it down to just the center part of the fabric where I could see the rust and the other colors on it so perfectly. And I fell in love with it. I did some stitching on it and it was like, I love it. So none of the time we invest in a project is wasted. Maybe we learn what we don't want to do anymore. Maybe we learn, wow, I really wanted to make an assemblage and now I learned that it's not my kind of thing. It's not something that I want to make more of. And that's okay too. And sometimes we learn that it's a technique or a style that we didn't realize we were going to love so much. And so we let ourselves get lost in it. And then we can go out and soak up more knowledge about that particular technique and do more of it because it's filling our hearts with joy. The point is just to look for your magic in your everyday creations. Look around you and find something that brings you joy. Create with it. Share it. Connect with other people. Share your knowledge with other people. Learn from other people, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There is no dumb question in the universe. The only dumb question is the one you didn't answer because you were afraid. So thanks for watching this with me. I hope you all dig deep, find your own courage to create, and go out and make some wonderful art and share it with the rest of the world. I so appreciate each and every one of you that comes on my artistic journey with me. It is so much more fun for me to walk this path knowing that I have an army of cheerleaders behind me. And I say army because that means you're strong. I have these strong cheerleaders behind me, even when they're quiet. They're encouraging. So your notes, your messages, your comments, your visits to the live stream, they all inspire me to go find my magic and find my courage to create and share it with the rest of you. Thank you so much for watching. And I will be back again next time. Let's have a talk down in the comments, okay? Bye-bye for now.